All right. So thank you all for joining. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Ralph Sartain. I'm the fire chief for Ashland Fire and Rescue. Just some quick fun facts about me. I've been in emergency services since 1991. I started off as a volunteer firefighter in Minot, North Dakota when I was stationed there in the military. I had no desire ever to be a firefighter. I planned on being a fighter pilot, and look where I am. So things all do change. I've been married for 29 years to the love of my life. I can't believe she's put up with me this long. I've raised a daughter and son-in-law here. For the longest time, I thought they were the only two Oregonians I knew. They were one born at Providence, one born at Rogue. I welcomed a son-in-law into our family 3 years ago when he decided to marry my daughter because he didn't know what he was getting himself into. I have visited 49 of 50 states, 7 countries, and 2 of our 16 U.S. territories. I like to travel, read, and do things like that. I hold 2 associates and 2 bachelor's degrees, and I'm a graduate from the National Fire Academy. So that's just a quick little snippet about me. So, Brian, if you want to switch it. All right. So I run fire administration. So I'm the fire chief. We are responsible for bringing everybody here together. So everybody in this group is responsible for some portion of fire administration. It's broken down into the wildfire safety division and our operations division. Our fire marshal, Mark Shea, and our deputy chief of operations, Marshall Razor, will be talking to you guys here shortly. So the fire administration is responsible for budgeting. As you're well aware with the Citizens Budget Committee, we pull together a budget for every 2 years. We bring it together and bring it forward to the community. We're responsible for purchasing all the items we need to run the fire department. We're responsible for personnel management, contract management, planning and logistical support, monitoring our program effectiveness, our public education, forecasting, incident response, data analytics, and providing technical and administrative support to our city council and our city administrator. Our little logo in the bottom is "Hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil." That's our little logo for the fire administration. We take in all the information, we have to listen to it, and then we filter it and then put it back out for the community. The biggest thing we try to do is ensure that we have the right resources for you to protect the community. We're watching the future trends. We're ensuring that we have the proper budget and then sharing with our stakeholders what they need to know about the fire department. Next slide, Brian. So a little history about Ashland Fire and Rescue. In 1887, we were founded with hose company number 1. In 1891, we had hose company number 2. In 1908, we built our second fire station. And then we only have 2 fire stations over 100 years later, still representing the city of Ashland. 1912, our fire hydrants came in. 1913, our first fire engine was delivered, and that's the fire engine you see down on the bottom left screen. 1967, we purchased our first rescue unit. In 1996, the biggest change came to Ashland Fire and Rescue when the city of Ashland purchased Ashland Life Support, which is a private ambulance service that was faltering due to excessive call volume. At that time, when they purchased Ashland Life Support, the administration of the city and the administration of the fire department really didn't pay attention to the call volume that they were assuming, and they took over a fire service and an ambulance service that was already picking up call volume, doubled the call volume, and did not add any staff. And we've been behind until very recently with staffing. In 2002, Fire Station 1, which is the fire station at the edge of the plaza, was replaced. And in 2012, Ashland led the country and led the state in forming the Force Division and took care of our community because of what we have around us. 2013, the community voted to replace Fire Station 2. And then in 2015, 3 firefighters were added to our roster, bringing our total firefighters to 30, which is where it has remained since that time. Listening to the city council listening to us and telling them that we needed help, we built a business plan that was developed and presented to our city council, the budget committee, with the help of our city manager, our finance director, and we did a 10-year business model, which was unanimously approved by the city council. And what that did was it launched our single role EMS program, which is the largest change to the fire department in very many years. With that, we added 8 single role EMS providers, and we'll get to that with Training Chief McGowan, which he'll discuss that because he runs that program. And then if you look at the upper right corner, that is our newest fire engine that was delivered last year, and its sister fire engine will be being delivered in July of next year. So with that, Brian, next. So this is the current makeup of Ashland Fire and Rescue. That's 48 employees. We are currently fully staffed. I'm the fire chief sitting at the top, with the deputy chief of operations running the training officer and all the group below it, the battalion chiefs and the operational staff. the fire marshal running the Fire and Life Safety Division and the Wildfire Division. And that is our current makeup. So Brian, begin. This was our last photo as a group taken in 2023, right before we started the single role program. So obviously we need to update it. And that is a great group of people that represent and protect this community. So I'm very proud of them. All right, next. You have all probably seen this slide before, thanks to our great emergency manager, Kelly Burns. And the reason we keep pushing this out is this is relatively new to the city of Ashland. And so we're making sure that you understand that you are responsible for your personal emergency management, knowing your zone, making sure you build your go kits for yourself, your kids, your older adults, and your pets, signing up for the emergency alerts if you have not done so by texting 97520 to 888-777. And this is one of the bigger things that kind of gets people in not understanding your zone. As you guys may or may not be aware, we had a pretty good sized fire down on I-5 at the beginning part of September. And during that fire, I have activated an evacuation zone, which then grew into a mandatory evacuation and then a level 2 adjacent to it. We were 2 zones away from hitting actually the city of Ashland, and the first zone it would have came into was zone 4. So this is what we're talking about. We want you all to understand this and understand your zones and where we're going with this. Next. And part of that is our evacuation levels. When you're coming into town, you'll see the sign that says our ready, set, go. Currently, we're at level 1, which we don't really post it as level 1, but we recommend because of where we live that you always stay at level 1. Due to some commerce reasons and some insurance reasons, we don't put anything on levels until we absolutely have to, because it can actually affect your home purchasing, your insurance, and everything else like that. So, be ready, be set, go. But with the city of Ashland, we recommend that you always stay ready to evacuate, not only just for wildfires, but the Cascadia earthquake. We live in the ring of fire with volcanoes, so we want to make sure that we have volcano eruption and all kinds of fun stuff. So there's all kinds of things we need to be prepared for, as well as our flood inundation zones. We can also use our evacuation zones for that. All right, Brian, next. All right. I am not Emily, so I would turn you over to her normally, but Emily is at training currently. Emily is our right-hand person. She's our senior fire department analyst, and she is responsible for making sure a lot of the stuff occurs with all of the billing. She does all of our ambulance membership. She does our state conflagration management, which is basically what it is when we get deployed out of our city fires at the request of the state. She does all the billing to make sure we get paid back for our community. She does all of our invoicing. She's our internal HR analyst. She's a liaison between our departments. One of the big things with the ambulance service that we've increased is our GEMT, which is the Ground Emergency Medical Transport Fund. It's a fund that we found to help support the fire service. It's only available to public entities, and it offsets the cost of actually the ambulance service. She also does our ambulance billing management, our time card record keeping. She's our front desk and our greeter when she comes in. She assists with budget tracking and pretty much everything we need help with. It's an Emily or a Brian show. So I wish she was here for you, but we sent her away to our fire department analyst school, and that's where she is currently. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to the Deputy Chief of Operations, which is Marshall Razor.
Thank you, Kelly. Sorry about that. I need to unmute myself. So, afternoon, everybody. Good to see everybody here. So as Chief Sartain explained, my name is Marshall Razor. I'm the Deputy Chief of Operations for Ashland Fire Rescue. A little bit about myself. I am a born and raised Oregonian. I was born in the Willamette Valley. Been here ever since. Majority of the time I was up in the Willamette Valley. About 23 years ago, me and my wife moved down to Southern Oregon area. Me and my wife have been married for 28 years, going on 29. I have 2 sons. The upper picture, that is my youngest son. That is Brendan. He just graduated from South Medford in June, and he's currently attending Whitman College in Walla Walla. The picture below is the 3 of us, my wife, my oldest son, Wyatt, who's over at OIT going through mechanical engineering, and he's in his senior year. The fire engine picture is back from the 4th of July parade of 2011. That's my wife in the back with my youngest son, Brendan, and Wyatt was up front, and I was getting to drive the engine that year before I promoted to captain and eventually battalion chief and so on. I have been with the city a little over 21 years. I've got a fun hire date of 3/3 of 03. It's an easy one to remember for me. So my roles and responsibilities. So I oversee and manage basically the day-to-day operations and provide guidance to the line staff on our operations side. Chief and I, along with Division Chief Shea and Division Chief, or Deputy Chief Shea and Division Chief McGowan, provide and come up with direction and the overall sense of purpose of the movement of the department. And then I get to figure out how that's going to look and how that's going to fit in to the daily operations of our crews. So with that, staffing means that I need to make sure that the crews have enough people on shift. Our shifts are created of 3 battalions. There's 1 battalion chief, 2 captains, 2 engineers, and 15 firefighters. So with that, need to make sure that we have the number of people necessary for daily operations. In that, the hiring and putting on the hiring process for when through attrition and retirement of people. Working with the crews, make sure that the apparatus, that they have apparatus to respond in, it's up and running, working and collaborating with our city shops, that our equipment's maintained, and that everything's in good operational order. With that, I oversee and keep the policies and procedures of our SOGs and SOPs up to date. And then I oversee and handle the specifically the radios and the MDCs portion of our fleet. As I mentioned a little bit ago, 3 battalions, each shift has a BC, captains. There are 30 line personnel. With that, we're allowed, the crews are allowed to have 2 off each day. So we're either at a minimum of 8 or a maximum of 10 personnel per day on the dual role side. As Chief mentioned, in 2023, we added the single role line. And with that, we've added 4 more paramedics and 4 more EMTs. And that allows us each day, they're on an offset schedule, but anywhere from 7 in the morning until midnight, we have at least 1 single role ambulance on to help augment the number of calls that we're running. Brian, next slide, please. So with the single roles and what is there and how have they come to be such a great asset and importance to us is in this slide we were talking about what does Ashland Fire respond to? What is operationally, what are our emergencies that we and calls that we are take up our day or our year? So as the top one, it's emergency medical response. This year to date, EMS is accounting for 82% of our call volume. So with that, prior to the inception and the rolling out of the single role program, we could easily cover 4 ambulances each day, sometimes 5, depending on, but we always needed to, in the back of our minds, keep a fire apparatus available in the service in the district. With the single role program rollout, when they're overlapping, we have 2 single role units on, and we still have the capability of adding 3 dual role ambulances to the system. So anywhere we can have 5 to 6 ambulances up and running if need be. With that takes the bulk of our call volume. Our rest of our call volume is structure fires. That can be anything from a residential structure fire to a multi-story commercial building, could be an outbuilding, being a shed, greenhouse. Grass and wildland fires, the city is, as everybody is well aware, that is a area that we focus on and concerned about throughout the year. With the Ashland Fire and Rescue, we're not only just a local response, we can be and have been deployed regionally through Josephine and Jackson County. Earlier this year, we had the ability to help out in other parts of the state and went up to the microwave fire, which was off of I-84. In years past, and as the state of Oregon is starting to wind down and get out of our fire season, California still stays very much at a heightened alert and so we have sent in years past and can be deployed outside of the state, primarily to California, but we can go to Washington, Nevada, if need be. Other call volumes is motor vehicle accidents, can be in town, on I-5, assist District 5. The airport, have had, and the potential for aircraft and helicopter emergencies. This one here was the picture was a plane crash here in Ashland off the airport in 2003. We do not have the hazmat team, but we do respond to the initial response. Medford has Region 8, so we do have a regional hazmat team here close by. AFNR does have an active technical rescue team that is confined space, rope rescue, high and low angle, trench rescue, and any help and assistance in the watershed. Primarily, it is mountain biking, but we have gone up to assist hikers in need. I don't like to consider or use the term all hazards because that puts a pretty significant load on the department or in concept. But when the public needs us, we've been on water leaks, people needing their irrigation busted, just trying to help find valves. We've been on roofs to unplug gutters in the middle of the night because it's causing some flooding. Natural gas odors, people smelling stuff. We have the technology and the tools to assist with that fuel leaks. So anytime the public gets to a point where they've exhausted and they just need help, we will come out and do what we can. And it may be simply finding them the right resource and connecting that individual with the right resource to help them mitigate their issues. Wasn't mentioned earlier, but Ashland covers the ASA number 3. That's the ambulance service area. We cover 650 square miles with that ambulance service area, and we roughly 10 square miles of fire protection for the city of Ashland. We do provide mutual aid to the surrounding fire district 5 and other agencies in both Jackson and Josephine County. So, and that is it. Thank you for your time.
Good afternoon. My name is Tom McGowan. I am the Division Chief of Training, Professional Standards, EMS. I started in first response in 1997 in Bayfield, Colorado. In my almost 28 years, I've served in law enforcement, fire primarily, as well as EMS. I have an associate's degree in fire science and paramedicine. I have a bachelor's degree in psychology as well as a master's in psychology and a master's in management and leadership. I'm also an executive fire officer graduate from the National Fire Academy. Next slide, please. A little outside of my professional environment. I have 3 children. My oldest is 25 and lives in Great Falls, Montana with my 2 grandbabies. My son is a senior at Grants Pass High School and is a Division I prospect for baseball. He's got about 14 schools looking at him right now. And then my youngest is a junior, and she is very into sports as well, with track and field as well as wrestling. And she is very into agriculture with showing show cattle. Next slide, please. So training division, professional standards, being in a career, a profession, one of the important elements for us to manage and invest in our personnel as well as our organization is to meet or exceed professional standards outlined occupationally. We have several agencies that we report to for our training and education. One of those is the ISO Insurance Service Office, which maintains certain parameters for our training and education qualifications, which directly impacts our community and their insurance rates for commercial residential facilities. We have the Department of Public Safety Standards and Training, which is the state agency that qualifies and recognizes state certification. That is regulated by ORS. And we report to them every 2 years on our training and our internal development. We have our internal regulations and requirements set by city policy. We also report to the Oregon Health Authority, which maintains our EMS certifications. We report every 2 years to them on our 40-ish personnel that maintain an EMT qualification. We'll be coming up on that recertification period in 2025. We also have the National Registry of Emergency Medical Technicians. That is another agency federally recognized for paramedic or EMT certifications. And we have several of our personnel that maintain their national registry licensure as well as an EMT. Why is that important to us that we prioritize and focus our training, our internal development, qualifications, and certification? One, to represent the profession and bring in that professional recognition of education and certification, as well as different levels of operations, meaning from our firefighters to our engineers, to our captains, our battalion chiefs, our executive chief officers. We hold responsibility to represent our service level and industry standard by our quality, our training and qualifications, as well as when, from a liability and legality standpoint, we by maintaining these state and federal recognized bodies and their qualification standards, we maintain a strong protection of our organization, our community, because we meet and exceed these local, state, and federal standards. The other aspect of a defined training, personal development, professional standards division is that it provides us direct opportunity to invest in our most valuable resource, which is our personnel, and investing in their goals, desires, and their passion to contribute to our organization and ultimately our service delivery to our community. We can define and help them navigate what that professional development looks like so that they can prepare themselves to engage their defined role in the organization, to better their own skill set, as well as prepare for advancement in leadership within our organization. Another component of my division is the single role unit. Chief Razor did speak to that, and I can attest to our model of single role EMS units being one of the most evaluated structures for single role resources in the state. Our model is different than other quote unquote single role resource units throughout the state. And to date, it has met or exceeded the objective behind single role resources. It has reduced the call impact to our dual role units, leaving them more available for priority fire and medical events. It also has helped bolster some capacity for our personnel, giving us another layer of service delivery to our community that is really directly focused on that priority EMS response. And like Chief Razor said, we have 650 square miles, which is a lot of real estate to maintain accountability for. This helps us meet and exceed our mandatory response times as EMS professionals by adding these additional resources. Next slide, please. Just to revisit, these are all local, state, and federal agencies that we report to, and we have accountability for our training, education, certification, and qualification. We are, and you see that ISO class 3. We are working diligently with ISO to maintain their requests and requirements for us to meet that ISO 3. You can be, the rating system is from a 1 to a 10. The lower that number is, the more value that brings to our community and their insurance needs for, as I mentioned, residential, commercial occupancies. Next slide, please. Thank you for your time and attention.
Good afternoon, all. My name is Mark Shea. I'm the fire marshal here at Ashland Fire Rescue. As part of my position, I oversee the Wildfire and Community Risk Reduction Division. I'm the fire code official for the city and the lead fire investigator for the city. I've worked in emergency services in Jackson and Justine County for the last 28 years and spent that time as a firefighter, fire officer, in doing fire marshal work, EMS, working on an ambulance, and educating our up-and-coming emergency responders at Road Community College and Klamath Community College. I hold a bachelor's degree in fire service administration. I'm an Oregon recognized fire marshal, and that's through the state fire marshal department. What that means is that I've proven to the highest level my knowledge and skill on interpreting and enforcing the Oregon Fire Code. I'm also an IAAI certified fire investigator. That's International Association of Arson Investigators certified fire investigator. That is the highest level of fire investigator that can be achieved, and that's done through, again, education, demonstrated education and training, as well as a specific minimum number of years investigating fires and a minimum number of fires investigated over your career. I currently sit on several state boards. I'm on the board of directors for the Oregon chapter of the International Association of Arson Investigators. I serve on 2 subcommittees for the Oregon Fire Code Committee. One of those, I'm the committee chair, and we are tasked with building and kind of revising the next version of the state fire code. And I also sit on the Certified Burn Manager Advisory Committee for Oregon Department of Forestry, guiding the certification needed for those that would conduct prescribed fires within the state. I'm married with 3 children, ages 21, 6, and 1. And a picture of my trailer there, because we spend a lot of our time off luxury camping across the state. Next slide, please, Brian. Moving on to talk about the Wildfire and Community Risk Reduction Division. We are overall responsible for reducing Ashland's fire risk. We look at the city's fire risk holistically. We understand that a wildfire is likely going to burn structures, and that if a structure catches on fire, that's likely going to move to the wildland or the forest. So we need to look at it as a whole. And we strive to use data-driven community risk reduction practices. What does that mean? An example would be, in the past, we've always taught kids about stop, drop, and roll. Well, people's clothes don't catch on fire very often, right? The data shows us that it's pretty rare. So now we're teaching in schools things like exit drills in the home. So if you do have a fire in the home, teaching kids how to get out and plan and practice that. We teach them how to deal with sudden cardiac arrest and to do hands-only CPR. So those are some examples of data-driven community risk reduction. Additionally, responsible for fire code inspections and enforcement. So what that looks like is really conducting regular inspections on businesses throughout the city to ensure that they're safe and compliant with the Oregon Fire Code. We issue fire-related permits. Some of those, or most of those, are through the Oregon Fire Code. There's different types of permits. Might be a construction fire code permit, which an example of that would be like a commercial paint booth would require a fire code construction permit. We would issue operational permits within the fire code. Example of that would be the circus was in town recently, and that required a permit for the tent, that required a permit to make sure that they have good exiting and that they have the ability to, with a large capacity of people, for those folks to exit out of the tent correctly and have fire extinguishers and whatnot. And we're also responsible for burn permits when that is acceptable time of year to do. We look at land development review for access and water supply. So as a property is going to be developed and that developer applies to our community development department, part of what we do within the Wildfire Community Risk Reduction Division is look at those plans, and we make sure that throughout the life of that property, how they're intending on developing it, that there's good access for emergency response. So we have good roadways and good water supply. You know, if they plan on building a commercial building, we want to make sure that there's adequate fire hydrants. We also review pre-construction plan review for fire protection systems. So fire sprinkler systems, fire alarm systems, we're going to conduct a technical review on those systems. And it's not just conducting that technical review initially, but following through with inspections throughout the process until that fire alarm or fire sprinkler system is done. And we make sure that it's usable, that it's going to be functioning appropriately. We're tasked with investigating all fires within the city, as well as forest management, community wildfire prevention, and wildfire smoke adaptation, in addition to public education. You're going to hear more about those things here shortly from the folks that handle them frontline. But before you do that, I actually have a homework assignment for you. Fire Prevention Week starts Sunday. This year's theme for Fire Prevention Week is smoke alarms, make them work for you. So after class, please check your smoke alarm. Make sure that you have a working smoke alarm in your home, at least one near every sleeping area. And then remind 2 friends or family members to check their smoke alarms. With that, I appreciate your time, and I will turn you over to Chris Chambers.
I just want to say to everyone listening that assignment, if you do that, it might prevent your smoke alarms from testing themselves at 2 a.m. when the batteries go low, because that seems to be a common thing that happens with everyone. It's 2 a.m. to wake you up.
Good point, Kelly.
All right, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Chris Chambers. I am the forestry officer here at Ashland Fire and Rescue, and I'm going to talk real fast because I got to jam 50 years worth of stuff into 5 minutes. So hang on, here we go. I've been a member of Ashland Fire and Rescue since 2002. I grew up here in Ashland and graduated from Ashland High School in 1992, and then from Oregon State University with a degree in forest ecology. Here at the fire department, I started years ago. Seems like a long time now. What's now the Wildfire Division, and our Firewise Communities programs, which is now our Fire Adapted Communities program. I manage 1,200 acres of city and parks forest lands that are in and around our community, represent the city and the Ashland Forest Resiliency Project in our municipal watershed and the areas surrounding it. Since 2010, an area of 58,000 acres. And I also serve as the public information officer for the fire department. So if you see somebody on TV and there's a fire or something that's happening, it's probably me, unless the thing is really bad, and then I pass it off to the fire chief. In the community, I'm on the Ashland School Board Budget Committee and Innovation Committee. I was the president of the Ashland Rotary Club of Ashland Lithia Springs in 2019 and 20. And I'm on the board of the Southern Oregon Ski Education Foundation, which is the group that manages all the local high school ski teams. But the picture there is my daughter and I. Oh, no, go back. My daughter Anya and I did play football here at Ashland High School back in the day, and I was number 14, and she's taken up number 14 now, as well as a starter on the varsity soccer team. So go Grizzlies. If you want to see some awesome soccer, come out and watch them. They play next Monday as the next home game. And I also have an older daughter who's at Vassar College in New York, and my wife, Leah, all live here in Ashland. Okay, and for fun, next slide. I enjoy river rafting. This is me going down the main chute of Rainy Falls, and just for the record, the boat did make it through this upright, although I was not in the boat at the end. We've gone all over the Western United States doing river trips. It's a lot of fun and a lot of adventure, so that keeps me busy in my off time. All right, next. So a little bit about our forests. We live in a dry forest ecosystem. Dry forests evolved with frequent fire. They often look like this in the picture, which is wide, big trees, lots of space in between. We've got small trees coming up underneath, but fire is going to burn some of those trees out. And how do we know that we have an ecosystem like this? And how do we know that dry forests evolved with frequent fire? Next. Well, we do something called pyrodendrochronology, big word, but it basically means looking backward in time through tree rings to see how much fire was on the landscape. This is a colleague of mine from the Nature Conservancy, Carrie Metlin. Some of you might know Carrie. And they cut through these old stumps to figure out how many fires are recorded, in particularly old ponderosa pine trees going back to this case. You can see 1677, the year at the bottom there. I have a tree sample that goes back to the 1300s. These have been harvested out of our watershed from big old stumps like the one Carrie's cutting. And if you do that in enough places, you can recreate the fire history of the past many hundreds of years. And turns out there was a lot of fire on the landscape, and it maintained our forests. A lot of that fire was applied by indigenous peoples who lived here for thousands and thousands of years and had a very sophisticated system of managing the forests, and particularly using fire to do it. And as you get close to Ashland, the fire scars point towards fire being on the landscape every 2 to 5 years, because they were protecting the places where they lived. And as you look through the watershed, fire was happening on an average of every 7 to 15 years. So right around 10 years would kind of be the midpoint. Next. So without all that fire, starting about 150 years ago, as tribes were pushed out of the area and worse, and people came in, European settlers, and really stopped that fire. from happening. So trees grew in, lots and lots of trees grew in, they grew dense, and we end up with a forest looking like the one in the photo, which is very overstocked, unhealthy. It's beyond its carrying capacity. The land can't support this many trees over time. And so something has to change that. And typically those things, nature will apply the correction factor, which is fire and or insects, and sometimes both. We've seen recently big insect outbreaks in the hills above town. Overly dense forests are just the dinner bell ringing for bark beetles, and then that has all kinds of fire implications too, as trees die and fall onto the ground, making more fuel for future fires. So our job is to somehow roll the clock back on our forests, create conditions that are going to lead to healthier forests in the future, protect our community and the natural resources that we depend on from our watershed, like our drinking water, the source of life for Ashland, that almost all comes from the Ashland Municipal Watershed just above town. Next. So that situation leads us to the wildfire paradox. I know for everybody out there, it seems like we have a lot of fire right now every year on the landscape. But when we look back in a historical record, we actually don't have as much fire as we used to. We just had too many fires of the wrong kind. Instead of consistent underburns and small fires that are low intensity, we have now really big, high intensity fires. Stephen Pine is an amazing resource on the history of fire from Arizona State University. He's actually come here and spoke at SOU a number of years ago. What we need to do is restore that role of good fire in the landscape in and surrounding our community. Next. So we have actually been pretty successful in doing that through the Ashland Forest Resiliency Stewardship Project, which started in earnest back in 2010. We've now managed to change the conditions, reduce fuels, reduce the density of trees, which used to average about 50 per acre, and now we're at about 175 per acre. We've been able to do that on all the places that are colored on this map: red, green, and blue. Red is work done on private land, green is work done on U.S. Forest Service land, and blue is work done on city-owned land. All that totals about 14,000 acres of work over the last 15 years, which is an incredible task that could not be done without all our partners that we put together for this project, which is the Forest Service, the Nature Conservancy, Lomacotzi Restoration Project, and us here at the City of Ashland through the Forestry and Wildfire Division. So that's a pretty big landscape impact in the work that we've been able to do. We call it the moat around the castle. We're trying to develop opportunities to manage landscape wildfires to protect our community and, of course, natural resources, habitat, and our water supply. Next. One of the activities that's associated with our work is helicopter logging. This picture, as you can see the helicopter against the sky in the background, I took in the spring this year for our helicopter project that was on city forest lands. That project was about 450 acres, and primarily in response to the die-off of Douglas fir trees in the ring around the city, in that the moat around the castle was becoming pretty non-functional as we experienced high levels of drought and high temperatures that Douglas fir does not do well with. And that was right in our backyard, obviously right behind homes. This is Upper Morton Street here in Ashland. So reducing the fuels and forest density is really important. Next. And ultimately what we want our forests to look like is this: open forests, leaving big trees that have been there for centuries. Sometimes we leave dense patches for habitat, like in the background of this picture, and then we burn the fuels that result from it to reduce the overall fuel load and get us to a place where we can put good fire back on the landscape. So you see the burn piles there. Those are going away. Next picture. In this picture, burn piles we do during the wintertime, cold and wet. Fire stays in the pile footprint, and we reduce a lot of the surface, and we call ladder fuels, or anything that allows fire to climb up into the trees. Next. And then ultimately, this is what we want to do: reestablish the role of fire to manage the ecosystem. This is actually from 2012, what we call an underburn or a broadcast burn, letting fire do the work for us. It doesn't kill those trees in the background. The trees are adapted to fire, have evolved with it. We just want to keep the flames low and consuming the ground fuels and keeping a healthy forest and a safe community. Next. Okay, so in a quick transition here, we really have our work cut out for us in the coming years and decades, as climate change is putting a significant pressure on our ecosystems and our communities through hot days and droughts over many years. And even if we cut off all the carbon being emitted into the atmosphere right now, we wouldn't see the benefits of that until 2050. So we really are going to have to buckle down over the coming decades. And that leads us to the Community Wildfire Protection Plan, my last slide. So the Community Wildfire Protection Plan, I actually was on the team that wrote that in 2004. It led to the Ashland Forest Resiliency Project, or AFR, but in 20 years, the face of wildfire, I think nobody would argue, has changed significantly. We've got a $250,000 grant for this project. We have multiple committees set up to inform it. The process is happening as we speak, and we're using some really cutting edge data that we've collected via drone called LiDAR, and looking forward to a plan that will be drafted for comment by the public, probably by January and February, and then looking for council approval in April. And we're going to be putting a survey out to the public this week, so pay attention to the city's website for that. With that, that's all I've got. Thank you so much. Look forward to the questions at the end.
Thank you, Chris. It's my turn. My name is Brian Hendricks. I am the Fire Adaptive Communities Coordinator for Ashland Fire and Rescue. I work closely with Chris Chambers to help protect our community from wildfires and wildfire within our community, because we are a wildland-urban interface. First, a little bit about me. Been with Ashland Fire and Rescue since 2017. Moved to Jackson County from Tokyo in 2011. I have a Bachelor of Arts from Sonoma State University. Grew up in the foothills of Northern California, very used to wildfires and scrub brush fires, very common thing in where I lived. I've been married for 19 years. I have 3 amazing boys, a sophomore and junior at Ashland High School. They play with the volleyball team and cross country and in the jazz band. We love traveling, arts of any sort, and a lot of outdoor adventures with my family and close friends. Halloween is our favorite holiday. We try to do a group theme every year. If anybody knows Trash Truck, I think that's what we're going for this year because of the little one. So it's a great Netflix show for kids. All right, next slide. So being a fire adaptive community is very important because commonly and historically wildfires have been in the forest, but over decades, as we have urban expansion, we build into those forests. Over 30% of new residential areas are built into forested environments now. And so wildfires do directly impact us through windblown ember more than anything else. Something starts as a wildfire and then blows embers into a community, starting spot fires, which start igniting structures. Once a structure is ignited, there's so much more potential for the house next door to also catch fire because the greater amount of heat generation. And so even if the wall of flame of a forest fire isn't right there, structures still burn because of those wind-blown embers and wind-driven fires that lead to urban conflagration. Okay, and we do not have enough firefighters to protect a whole city all at once. There just aren't enough resources for that. So residents and businesses, we need your help. You can take action to increase the chances of homes and businesses surviving by taking preparatory action and reducing risks around each structure. For here in our valley around Ashland, we've had 3 very significant fires over just the past 15 years, starting with the Siskiyou fire in 2009, where we actually had part of the community evacuate. And embers from that fire up on the south side of town were blowing into the Tolman Creek area and Mountain Ranch neighborhoods. 2010, we actually started losing a significant portion of homes in the Oak Knoll fire along I-5. We lost 11 residences. Homes were burning extremely quickly, primarily because of the wind-blown fire, embers being cast across the highway, igniting flammable fuels. So like that is flammable vegetation like junipers, arborvitae, things that planted in the 60s and 70s because they look green and stayed green, and our valley used to be a little more moist. That is no longer the case, where these are high hazard fuels now that we are trying to reduce within our community and between homes, because like the Almeda fire proved, wind driven fire is probably your biggest threat at this point, where vegetation and human storage between homes, a lot of it's highly combustible. Homes are being built closer and closer together. And so to protect our community, we really have to start thinking about wildfire as part of the neighborhood, okay? And we need everyone's help to become more fire adapted in Ashland, because whether you work here, live here, go to school here, or just oversee a regional component, everyone has a role to play to help harden structures, reduce risk by planting the right vegetation, removing the wrong vegetation, educating each other, your own family, co-workers, bosses, so that we all get on a better page together through codes and ordinances, working together in community groups, so that we can all be aware of those risks, so that we can all have a better chance of reducing those risks. What we use here in Ashland is the Fire Adapted Communities approach. This is the Fire Adapted Communities Wheel, developed by the Fire Adapted Communities Learning Network, which is a nationally known program funded by the Forest Service. A lot of our projects and programs are part of this broader program model. It is utilized nationally. We are one of the leading communities in the country that utilizes this. And it is customizable for local needs, depending on how big you need to scale up or down based on the size of your community. A good example that we do in just one component of this wheel is resident mitigation, which includes a lot of our Firewise USA, defensible space education, our home hardening education, and our safety campaigns in the spring. And that is a lot of what we do, and it's just one slice of tin out of this whole wheel. What Mark Shea, Tom McGowan, the fire chief, and Marshall Razor focus on is that response and the crews being able to respond to fire, to respond to other emergencies. That is a whole nother slice of this pie of being ready as a fire agency to respond to these emergencies effectively, so that we can put out the wrong fires, but have people like Chris on board who know when we can say, well, let's let that one burn a little bit longer because that's in a good spot that we've already prepared, that is safe. And that's part of letting good fire stand and putting out those bad fires as immediately as possible. And in becoming fire adapted, we have almost every component of what a WUI environment consists of. We go from wildlands to urban town center in under a mile. And that means we have heavily forested areas that can produce a lot of heat and flame on a large scale in a wildfire event, blowing embers into town, onto buildings that many people who live in the urban area think, I don't have a wildfire risk because I live in town. That is no longer the case for many communities, and the past 7 years has shown more and more devastation on a large scale within urban centers where you never thought it would be possible before. So moving forward, we have a lot of work to do still to protect every aspect of this. What Chris has done over the past 20 years is built a really great moat around Ashland. The problem is we haven't spent as much time and effort within the community itself, reducing and thinning out those risks between each and every structure. And so that is what we move forward with, and a lot of what the new CWPP will incorporate is how to do better at reducing risk within the community itself to avoid future conflagrations like Almeda, because it has a devastating impact to the economy and our residents. So in the Fire Adaptive Communities program, we have a lot of projects and programs like Firewise USA Communities. We used to have the most communities in the nation. We've scaled back a little on our support of it, so we now have 22 active communities instead of 36. But it's still a main point of what we try to do to guide neighborhoods who want to do something for themselves. We help guide them in that process through the Firewise USA Communities program. We look to secure grant funding to do mitigation projects, to purchase educational materials or supplies and equipment for all of these activities. The biggest grant we have so far that Hannah will speak to in a few moments is our FEMA pre-disaster mitigation grant, which in total is a $4 million project. We are trying to target the top 1,100 at-risk homes within Ashland to get mitigation on the ground, to remove junipers or other highly flammable plants, to remove bark mulch, to help defend those structures better from wildfire risk. We do free wildfire risk assessments for residences and businesses. We also do smoke preparedness assessments for businesses so that we can help improve their envelope so they have better working conditions for their employees or safer airspaces for their customers. Because even if we don't have wildfire, a lot of us have gotten used to the smoke intrusion, even from fires from Canada or California. And so it is an impact on our health and our economy. And we want to make sure that we can educate and help our residents and businesses as best as possible. We do a lot of preparedness and risk reduction campaigns. For instance, green debris cleanup days and drop-off days at Valley View Transfer Center every year. We host education courses for realtor groups, landscapers and contractors, and the general public, just to help educate people as how wildfire works and how homes burn, so that they can be better informed in their daily life to be like, oh yeah, all those Amazon boxes next to the house on my wood porch, maybe I should fold up and remove and get in the recycle bin because it is in the middle of fire season, instead of just leaving them there. Even things like that, just having that knowledge helps in the day-to-day to take little bites out of those risks. One of our biggest projects right now has been training volunteers in our community, to perform wildfire risk assessments on individual homes. So that is residents helping residents. We train volunteers in our community to go out and talk to other homeowners and residents so that we have more people out there educating our community, because it's typically only been me or Chris, one or two staff members at a time, or my predecessors, Katie and Allison. And now with more volunteers certified in this knowledge, we get more people out there. For instance, with just 2 volunteers, when we first started the program, we were able to assess over 180 homes in 1 year. And that was no staff time, them doing that as volunteers. And we are continuing that process to train more volunteers now. If you have questions, please reach out. Here is my email and phone number. Otherwise, go to Fire Adapted Ashland on our city website, and you can reach out to me that way. Otherwise, next is Sydney Jenkins, the Fire and Life Safety Specialist. Thank you so much. Give him a moment. You might have a technical difficulty here.
We're not hearing you quite yet, Sydney, so let us know.
How about now? Perfect. All right, so I'm the Fire and Life Safety Specialist here at Ashland Fire and Rescue. I've been here for 2.5 years. I was born and raised in Medford. I just recently finished my bachelor's degree in Fire Service Administration. I enjoy doing a lot of graphic design and 3D printing projects for the station. One of them being the ambulance and fire engine in this slide. I made some stickers out of those. And then I built a Lego model of our Fire Station 1, which is on display here in our lobby if you'd like to see it up close. And I am the drone pilot for our department. And I am proud to have 3 pet ferrets, as you can see scattered about the slide. Next slide, please. So one of the programs I oversee is weed abatement. So Ashland Municipal Code requires every lot within the city to have all dry grass, weeds, and noxious vegetation cut before the start of fire season every year. Simple overview is everything needs to be 4 inches or less, at least 30 feet around every structure, even on neighboring properties, 15 feet from property lines, access roads and driveways, and 3 feet clearance around all hydrants. Noxious vegetation includes blackberries, brooms, and thistles, which you'll see pop up everywhere. They're pretty hard to get rid of. And then this is a complaint-based system. So if you ever drive by a property and you're like, man, that grass never went away, there's a good chance nobody ever complained about it, or there might be an owner that's really hard to track down. Next slide, please. The other program I oversee is the Community Emergency Response Team, otherwise known as CERT. CERT has 2 modes, which is preparedness mode and activated. So first I'll talk about our preparedness mode, and the specialty group for preparedness is the RAP program, which Brian had touched on. They do a lot of farmers market outreach to provide emergency preparedness information. They'll help with emergency alert registrations. They'll do different annual preparedness classes. We have monthly classes. We've done evacuation exercises where we got the public to participate and practice getting evacuation notifications. And we have a ham radio team that is ready at any given moment and meets every week to make sure their radios are working. And then on the right, we have our CERT volunteers who do the radio team, actually working on teaching our Ashland Fiber Network team how to use radios effectively. Next slide, please. And then this is CERT in our activation mode. Our specialty group is the RAT team, the Rapid Activation Team. They have more advanced CERT training, so they're able to help us with more things. Some things they can do to help us out in an emergency is to help staff an emergency operations center. Like I said, radio team can assist with communications. They can stand up points of distribution or information centers for people who need supplies or wondering about the status of an event. They can go and patrol already burned areas in the event of a fire to check for any hot spots or embers. Sandbag critical areas during a flood event. Provide rehabilitation for our responders on an incident. And they help manage mass casualty medical stations. As you can see on the right, bottom right, that's a simulated mass casualty event, and they are training to manage a large group of victims in that event. Next slide, please. All right, last thing is we have our annual training coming up this month. It takes place over the course of 2 weekends. It's the basic training to become a CERT volunteer, but it's also just really good community training to know how to be better prepared to help yourself, your family, your neighbors in the event of a disaster. So it takes place on these 4 dates. The last day is only going to be 2 or 3 hours scheduled within that time block. You'll learn things like radio operations, disaster medical, light search and rescue, disaster psychology, terrorism awareness, and tons of extra stuff. As you can see in the picture, we also do hands-on extinguisher training and lots of hands-on activities taught by local first responders. If you want to sign up, just go to ashlandcert.org and there's a button to sign up for basic training. Thank you for your time.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sarah Jones, and I'm the Community Engagement Coordinator for the Ashland Forest Resiliency. And I've been with Ashland Fire and Rescue for 8 years now. And it's been my pleasure and honor to serve the citizens of Ashland and work with some really amazing colleagues, both within the Wildfire and Community Risk Reduction Division and with other departments in the City of Ashland for improved smoke and wildfire resilience. So on the far right, you can see a picture of me above the Kiger Gorge, and that's on the top of the Steens Mountains. So I was born in Eastern Oregon and grew up visiting and hiking and camping in the East Side Forest, and moved to Ashland in 2014 and began working for Ashland Fire and Rescue in 2016, and have been working on the Ashland Forest Resiliency Project and development of SmokeWise Ashland, and then also a new program that you may not have heard about, Southern Oregon Fire Ecology Education. And the second picture, you can see a picture of myself in front of the Capitol building in Washington, D.C., and I was able to go and advocate for children's environmental health as part of a project that I'll tell you about more later in the slideshow. And then the third picture, you can see a picture of my family. My 3 boys mean the world to me. And my husband, Uriah, he actually works for the City of Ashland too, in the water department too. So there's a picture of him there. And I wanted to share a picture of my mom because she did live here in Ashland for a couple years, and she took an OLLI class, and some of you might recognize my mom, Kathy. And this is a picture from her wedding in 2020. And my my brother said, "We're done with 2019, bring on 2020." And so I just thought it was kind of a funny memory to share with everyone, because we never know what's going to happen in the future, and it's always good to be ready for that. And that's what I've been working on in the community with smoke and wildfire resilience. Next slide, please. And so here you can see all the wonderful partners that we've worked with for our projects. We've worked with the Ashland Chamber of Commerce for SmokeWise Ashland to help our businesses be more ready for smoke. And just this past spring, we had a smoke and emergency preparedness event for for businesses. And I wanted to make sure that you could follow up and see where to learn more about each of our projects. So ashlandwatershed.org is where you can find out about Ashland Forest Resiliencies projects. And then smokewiseashland.org is where you can find out about SmokeWise. And then that last web address is where you can learn about Southern Oregon Fire Ecology Education. And the way that we're really able to do this work is by partnering with local organizations serving vulnerable populations and people who are more at risk of harm from smoke and wildfire, but also our regional partners too. And next slide. Here you can see a picture of children playing at Oregon Child Development Coalition in the Old Briscoe School, and we've installed air cleaners and scrubbers and also air quality monitors as part of an EPA grant that we're administering with Oregon State University to help our schools and preschools be more ready for smoke. And in the bottom right corner, you can see a picture of another SmokeWise program that we do classes every year with the Ashland Senior Center. And these are great classes for us to do every year, where we're able to walk people through the steps that they can take to be more ready for smoke. And then we did a project to give away air cleaners. We've given away 630 air cleaners to date. And this week we are having a class tomorrow at Oregon Child Development at
Development
OCDC,
Coalition. Got
at
it.
the Briscoe
OCDC.
School, to give away another 80 air cleaners to families who attend the program there. And so I'm really excited about being able to do that for the community and work with partners on that. And then in the bottom right corner, you can see air scrubbers that we've installed at the Ashland Public Library too. So you might hear those when you go into the library when we do have smoke during the summer months, but we also have smoke year round from some of our controlled burning. It's much lower concentration, but we want you to be ready for smoke year round. And that's what Smokewise Ashland helps us do as a community. Next slide, please. And then we're also working on the social resilience for our community. So one of the programs that we have is called Southern Oregon Fire Ecology Education. And we are working with teachers and students for them to be able to learn about the ecology of our forests, which Chris Chambers covered a little bit of, and learn about fire adapted communities, and also be able to learn about fire science and the fire triangle and all the aspects of how that works. So Science Works is where we are doing some experiments with students so that they can learn about fire science. And we are helping to share this program across the region with an EPA grant for $350,000. And we've partnered with Southern Oregon Forest Restoration Collaborative to be able to do that grant and reach students. And just in the past year, we've reached 2,500 students with our program and project to be able to teach them more about how to be ready. And I wanted to get everyone invited to Salmon Festival. That will be next weekend on October 12th. And you can come out and learn more about all of the programs I've talked to you about with Ashland Forest Resiliency, Southern Oregon Fire Ecology Education, and Smokewise Ashland. And with that, I want to hand it over to Hannah King. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. I'll keep this quick so we have time for questions at the end. I'm Hannah King. I'm brand new to the fire station. I'm the wildfire risk reduction specialist and work as the manager of the FEMA grant that we have, the Ashland Wildfire Mitigation Grant. I started as a temp in the utility billing department and then came over here, and Emily had me work, and then Brian met me and we started work here. I just officially joined the fire station in July. I graduated from Sonoma State just last year with a BA in political science and sociology. I grew up in Wairika, California, so very aware of wildfire and what it does to our communities. And I'm the third oldest of 9 siblings, so my parents have their hands full, that's for sure. And my best friend, his name is Seamus. He's a 4-year-old border collie, and he loves Frisbees, that's for sure. All right, we can go on to the FEMA grant. So the grant is helping the top 1,100 houses in the, now I'm going too fast. Helps the houses in Ashland, and we can reimburse 75% of the work that residents do to mitigate fire around their house. So we can reimburse $2,150 for vegetation removal and $10,000 for replacing wood shake roofing. And so far we've done over 160 projects, and we will continue. And it's all about removing vegetation to create a defensible space around the home. And down at the bottom, we can see some before and afters. Some people are worried that we're going to ask you to remove 100% of vegetation, and that's not it. We're just creating space between the home for fire danger and for our firefighters to be able to get in there and work safely. And we can move on to the next slide. And so we will come out and we do an assessment, and we create a work map. That example is on the right, and we'll give each project a work map and a work plan that's individualized to their house and their property, explaining exactly what the grant will cover and what needs to happen. And we try to educate everyone we go out with. And so anyone who's on that top 1,100 is pre-qualified for this grant. So if you are interested, you may have received a letter either a couple years ago or just recently, or you can always email me at hannah.king@ashland.or.us. And we can talk about if you're on the pre-qualified list. Thank you.
I think Brian stepped out also, so that we'll have to get him to turn off the slideshow. That concluded our presentation, so it'll be question and answers now.